Episode 2, season 2. Can you believe it?
I know.
We're moving
I know.
forward. This is great. This is great. We're moving forward with
I'm happy
the
to be
show.
here.
I'm happy to be here as well. Last week's episode, finally, I feel like we went back into the right rhythm, into the right pacing of what makes our show so special. And next week we have our first guest already this season.
I know. That's really cool.
It's bananas. I have to check in with our guest at some point very soon to make sure that all is still confirmed for next week, and perhaps maybe even work out, what he feels like he wants to share with us next week in regards to, again, just as a reminder for everybody listening, this season we are focusing more on one topic and then, or like one umbrella theme, and then digging in with different topics under that umbrella. And for season 2, both Allison and I have chosen to stick with the umbrella theme of transformation.
Exactly.
Because we feel like it's very resonant, not just in our lives, but it feels like it's everywhere. And
it is everywhere. There's a lot of destruction going on right now.
Yeah. Even
and the only way through this destruction is transformation.
Very true.
Destruction brings transformation.
Very true. I like that you said. I like that. The only way through destruction is transformation. That is so. I think I might use that somewhere in a book one day. The only way
came out. I wasn't expecting to say that.
That's really interesting, though. I feel like you just you just became a vessel for the show and decided what today's topic is. I find that very interesting, especially because around me right now, it feels like there's a lot of destruction happening. I have a lot of friends who are in, well, some still are in very toxic relationships, and some of them have allowed the destruction to happen. Let me put it that way. Some of them just surrendered to the destruction and allowed themselves to be reborn via this destruction by letting go of the relationship. Others seem like they're too afraid right now to surrender to that destruction, and what might come from that destruction if they were to do that, if they were to let go. Even my clients at work, I'm hearing so many people going through the deterioration or the falling apart of their relationships. And not just necessarily, I'm not necessarily saying that this is just in terms of like romantic relationships, but just relationships in general, connections with people. Just today, I was with my best friend. We were having lunch together, and he was telling me how his friendship circle is shrinking. So in a sense, it is going through this destructive process because all these fragments are moving away. So it's very interesting that you would say that today. I got the angel bumps. As
well, I love how you said surrender, because I was sitting here before I hopped on Zoom and I got out one of my favorite books. This really one of my go-to books here, The Divine Mystery Report by Sri Kalshwar. And I was just like, so what today? What should I, as a person, focus on today? And the first thing that came up was surrender to love and win God.
Oof.
So talking about transformation, and you just said the word surrender, and so I had some time to kind of reflect on it. a little bit before we started. But I think you're right. Like, I'm even finding it in my life. I feel like today for me is a little sobering. As you know, my life has been absolutely insane over the past week and a half. And to top off, the last bit of it, the AC broke and it's hotter than heck here in Florida right now. And our house got to like over 90 degrees. And I had to sleep in a hotel last night. And I didn't sleep at all because I had my 8-year-old kicking me. No, not my 8-year-old anymore. My 9-year-old. I can't believe he's 9. Holy crap. My 9-year-old kicking me in the back at a hotel. And, the person who was in the hotel beside me had their TV blaring all night. And this morning I was like, well, you know what? This is going to be a great day and I'm going to surrender. And that's where I'm at right now. So, yeah, it's really interesting right now because I feel like my circle's also getting smaller. It's like there's something going on right now that's forcing us to live in our own truth, forcing the people out that don't need to be here, bringing the people in that need to be.
It's also very interesting, the quote that you read from Sri Kalashwar's book, surrender to love and to only one God. And you and I both have discussed on the show how God is creation, maintenance, and then destruction. And so surrendering to the destruction is in a way surrendering to God, because you are surrendering to that process. You're surrendering to, and it's also very ironic to me that we're like on the precipice of starting fall season, which is sort of like the beginning of the destruction in terms of Mother Nature. The trees are going to start changing color, the leaves are going to start changing color, the trees are going to start wilting. Like, it is that letting go, it is that like surrender to this part of the cycle of life. And even astrologically right now, I think there's a new moon tonight, and then I think it's tonight, and then Mercury gets out of retrograde in a couple of days. So all of these cycles are just like shit. There's so many shifts. So it's very interesting to me that how everything is sort of linking. Like this idea of the only way through destruction is transformation. I would even go a step further and say to surrender to the destruction is to transform.
I'm going to take it a little bit further.
Is this a challenge?
To surrender to the destruction is surrendering to love.
Oof. All right. Well, Allison 1, Al 0.
Because
that's very interesting. Okay. Would you mind like expanding on that? Like surrendering to the destruction is surrendering to love. And so in a way, what you're saying is destruction is in and of itself an act of love.
Yes.
Oof. Okay.
It is.
Let's unpack that. Let's dig into that.
Surrendering to the destruction is surrendering to love. And if God is the generator, the operator, and the destroyer, and God is love, why else would God destroy something? Why else would we have to go through the destruction period in our lives and in the world? Because something better, as a parent, there are many times that I've had to destroy things with my children when they were young, like relationships with people that don't serve them well, thought patterns that don't serve them well, You know, as a mom, it's my job to make sure they are the best that they can be. And if I have to get somebody out of their lives that's using them and abusing them, that is a form of destruction, only to bring them to a period of generation and rebirth, to get them to see something different, to get them to live in a different way. And you know, it's harder when they don't surrender to that. It's harder when they fight me on it. And that's just the way it is that I see with God. If God is destroying something, it's being done with love. And we may not see the bigger picture, but it's not for us to see the bigger picture.
Right.
It really isn't. It would add comfort if we would say, okay, this isn't working out. I'm afraid of my next step, and this is what's going to happen. So therefore, I won't be afraid anymore. But a lot of times, we don't see that. We don't see why we're being brought to this place of destruction. I mean, I feel like I'm kind of living it right now. And when I just said that, like there was like butterflies in my stomach. Like, what's going to happen next? I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know. But I'm constantly being reminded that for years I've asked for an answer. For years. And regardless of the outcome, destruction has to happen.
Amen.
To get to the place I prayed for so long. I don't want to be stuck in the place that I'm at because it's too painful. I don't want to be stuck in relationships with miscommunication and disrespect and all sorts of things, you know, but sometimes we don't know how to move forward. And then the destruction starts happening. And it can be scary, and it can be frustrating, and it can be sad, and it can bring up all of these emotions. But I have to remind myself I'm getting what I've prayed for. And that is an act of love, regardless of how it feels right now. My prayers are being answered right now. Right now. And what I tend to do is I tend to look back on my life and see when these destruction patterns start happening. And I've always come through it just fine. There hasn't been one time that I haven't been through it. So the only option that I really have is to trust and surrender that everything will be fine, because this destruction is an act of love in my life right now. It's getting me to see something more clearly, a pattern that maybe I've had for a very long time that needs to be shed. You know, a way I was looking at things that needs to be shed and let go. And these times, what they're doing for me right now is they're bringing me closer to my truth. They're helping me define my truth and who I am right now, because it's hard to do when everything's going well, isn't it? When everything's going well, what is there to change? What is there to see?
It's very interesting. It's very interesting. I love, you were mentioning earlier, you said something along the lines of, I don't know where I go from here. I don't know where this leads.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy that there's new Star Wars content that I can quote, because that just makes me happy. I've been watching the most recent Star Wars series, which is called Ahsoka. It's based on one of the characters that was introduced in the animated series. But to me, it's felt like the best kind of Star Wars content because it does deal with all the lore. It does deal with the Force. It does deal with a lot of the stuff that I like in Star Wars. In the most recent episode, there was a dialogue exchange between Ahsoka and her droid where they're essentially about to they're taking a leap of faith in a way. They are literally consumed by these giant flying squid whales that can traverse galaxies better than any human technology. And they're called Purgles. And so they allow one of the Purgles to eat their ship or to sit within like the mouth of the Purgle. And the Purgle is about to jump into hyperspace and go to a completely different galaxy. And the droid looks at Ahsoka and says, you know, do you even know where we're going to go? And Ahsoka says, no. And then the droid says, but we can, like, it could take us anywhere. And Ahsoka's response was, yes, isn't going anywhere better than going nowhere?
Yeah, I love that.
And I totally butchered the quote. It's not directly like that, but that is the intent. I think she just says, yes, but it's better than going nowhere. And I liked that because what you said sort of brought that quote back in. Because this fear of not knowing what's on the other side, that was one of the fears that I had a couple of weeks ago when I was going through my, I'll call it a meltdown because that's basically what it was. Because I was just afraid to surrender. I was afraid to surrender because I didn't know what was going to be on the other side. Because I could lead my life anywhere in a way. And that quote, when I watched the episode, really struck a chord. And now with you saying what you were saying, I think it's like solidified that quote to me so much, because so many times we're so afraid of what could be on the other side that we end up not taking that leap of faith.
Yeah.
And what happens as a consequence is that we end up going nowhere.
Right.
Instead of going anywhere, we go nowhere. And what's interesting is that that also links up to something that I shared with you the other day. And you're like, you should share that on the podcast. And I think this is the right time because it sort of parallels that, which is a lot of times when we're so resistant to the transformation, when we're so resistant to the destruction, to the maintenance, to the generation, we're so resistant to life itself. More often than not, it's because of our expectation of what should be. Yes. How things should be. I should not be dealing with destruction right now. I'm too good for destruction. I don't deserve destruction because according to my script, that's not the way my life is supposed to be. According to the script in my head, that's not where I'm supposed to go. That's not what's supposed to be happening. A lot of times when we deal with that, again, we are preventing the possibilities of anywhere. And the example that I used of this idea of surrendering to the moment and surrendering to going off script, because that's literally what we're doing. What we feel like we're doing is we're going off of our own script. I've been on many film sets and TV show sets in Lebanon. I've directed 2 short films. And the example that I gave you was that a lot of times, some of the best moments in the film, or some of the moments in the film that the audience reacted a certain way or said, oh, that's such a great shot, or oh, that's such a great moment, or oh, that's whatever. 9 times out of 10, those moments are off script. Those moments happened on set because of the moment itself, because the camera moved the right way, because the cinematographer trusted his intuition and shifted the camera. The lighting ends up working. The actor reacts because of them being in the moment, and everything is somehow captured. And it is just mind-boggling because it ends up creating such a beautiful moment. There's a moment in my first short film, the short film that I first directed, which is One Last Stand, where it almost looks like there's a 360-degree shot between the actors, because the camera, the way the camera moves and the way the actors move, it gives the illusion that that's what happened. That's not at all what happened. That shot was not, it was supposed to be a mistake. It was supposed to be an error. It was not, it was a mistake on the cinematographer because he went in the opposite direction that he was supposed to go on. But it ended up producing one of the most iconic shots in the movie because we just surrendered to the moment, because we went off script, and we realized that sometimes going off script actually gifts you with something that you never could have imagined. And so think of that, apply that in your life.
Yeah.
Go off script.
Your movie, One Last Stand, shows that destruction
Yeah, it does show the
perfectly.
destruction,
And it
doesn't it?
shows, your characters going through that destructive process, like questioning themselves and
Questioning everything.
remembering stories and
Yeah.
all of it. I love that the last time you were in Tampa, that we were all able to like sit down
and
all
rewatch
of
that
us.
movie.
And even my son, like Gavin, was there, and he was the angel in the movie. And Karis was there. It was her birthday. Your parents were there.
Yeah.
We had friends there, like all of us were in that room, and we got to watch One Last Stand all over again.
Yeah.
And it's this whole, short film on the destructive process.
It is. Yeah. Come to I'm getting angel
And then the
once
rebirth.
again. Like, it's a new layer
Yeah.
of One Last Stand that I never even thought of. It's this idea of, do we destroy everything or do we not? And what would happen if we were to destroy everything? And what do you mean destroy everything? And it's this entire debate about literally the destruction of everything and whether or not it should happen. And the fear of what happens if it does, and the leap of faith of surrendering to the destruction by the end of the movie.
Yes.
Look at that.
Yes. Everybody.
One last
Stand.
One Last Stand. Still making ripples in this, in my life. Still making ripples.
That was a great short film, though, and it won all these awards. I mean, you went to Cannes with that film.
Mm-hmm.
And it was also happening during a very destructive part of your life.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
Like, you were in the middle of a huge, like, destruction in your own life, but it was to get to your truth.
Yeah.
And that's usually what I find, why destruction has to happen, because it gets us closer to our truth and who we are.
Yeah.
This isn't right, so it has to be destroyed to bring us back to who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe not even back, to bring us forward to who we are, to evolve us, to evolve our consciousness into something more. And we can't do that. We can't transform without, living in our truth and speaking our truth.
There's another Star Wars quote, now that you mention that, that when it premiered in the movie theater, it brought up a lot of contention and divisiveness. But to me, I think it's a very powerful line. It's I believe in The Last Jedi, which is episode 8, which is the second film in the sequel trilogy. And it's a moment where Kylo Ren tells Rey let the past die. He says, let the past die, or you'll never become who you were meant to be.
Yes.
And a lot of people thought that this was Disney trying to say, let the older movies die or whatever. But I feel like if you take it out of the divisive context and you take the line for what it was in the film, it is literally what we're talking about right now. It is literally about letting go of everything you thought about yourself, letting that die so that you can finally become who you were always meant to be.
Yeah.
Letting go of all the pretenses, letting go of all the masks, letting go of all the labels, letting go of all the judgment, of the criticism, letting it all burn.
Letting go of all the rules.
Yes.
All those man-made rules.
Yes. Let that go. Let the past die, or you will never become who you were meant to be. I like that quote a lot more than another quote from Game of Thrones, which is, kill the boy, Jon Snow, kill the boy so the man can be born. The only reason I have contention with that, and you'll find that very interesting, is because kill the boy to me almost sounds like kill your inner child so that your adult self can, can take over. And I don't believe that is necessary. I don't believe that killing your inner child is a good thing at all. I would almost argue kill the man so that the boy can live. But yeah, no, I think it's very interesting. Again, this idea of letting the past die in this metaphorical way, because obviously we don't want to completely erase the past. That's how we learn. That's where all of our lessons are. But this idea of letting our chain to the past die, our connection to the past die, our codependency of the past, judgment, is that what you said?
Our attachment.
Yes, our attachment to the past, let that die so that we can move forward. Because all of these things that connect us to the past, if we don't let them get destroyed and get recycled into the earth as love, so that we can grow from that love again, so that we can bloom for that love again, from that love again. If we don't let that go, we're going nowhere.
Yes.
Rather than giving ourselves the opportunity to go anywhere.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. I love it. I love where this show is going today.
Yeah, me too.
I'm just
it's like
wow.
we're delayering and like we're digging deeper into the layers without it feeling like we're somehow drowning in it. On the contrary, it's like this very like it's a release rather than a sinking. It's like ooh, look at all the cosmos and look at all the connections that we're making within everything. And I think as long as we're looking up and not looking down, I think that's how we know we're in a good space.
And that's growth.
Yeah.
That's growth. And that's what I love about it. I love that my life might not be the easiest right now, but in this moment, there's growth. There's a different way of looking at things. Yes. There is a different way of looking at things. And just by being on this podcast right now, my world has grown and my perspective has grown even more.
Yeah.
Because I'm here and I'm just being kind of raw and real, and I'm not putting on a show and I'm not putting on a mask. I'm just like, I'm here. Feel like I've been through a war, but I'm here.
Because what's beautiful is that within this moment, what you and I are doing are generating.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of this moment, what's happening is a ton of destruction.
Well, yeah, there is destruction going on, but within that destruction, there is rebirth happening in this very moment.
Because life always finds a way.
It always does.
Yeah.
It always
It's just
does.
a very interesting.
It always
It's just
does.
a very interesting parallel that as we are going through these destructive cycles, these transformative cycles, when we come to speak in the Vistara Hour, it's almost like there's a ceasefire outside in order for the generation here
Yeah.
to happen. And I hope that
Yeah.
it's the same for anybody that listens to our show, that in the midst of whatever you're going through in your life, I hope that what is coming through in the moment that you're listening to the show is creation. It's a ceasefire. If we can offer a ceasefire to anybody listening to the show, then we're blessed.
Yeah. And hopefully somebody can make a connection in their life and start thinking a different way, or, oh my gosh, I never thought about destruction being love before. And that one can be a little hard for some people to understand and actually feel. But anything else that we might say, wow, I've made a connection here. And that's what matters. That's what matters, is that you don't give up. When life gets hard, you don't give up. You surrender. Surrendering
Absolutely.
is not giving up
Absolutely.
at all.
No. But see, that's the thing. I think going back to destruction is love, one of the greatest acts of love that you can do for yourself and for someone else, or, is to let go. Letting go is the greatest act of love. Allowing, liberating, that is an act of love. Allowing life to happen, that is an act of love. Allowing someone to leave is an act of love. It's an act of self-love, and it's an act of love towards that person. I think this is what a lot of people fear the most when it comes to, and I guess I'm sorry, I'm bringing up like relationships ending or breakups again, but it's because it's so like prominent in my life right now, surrounded. A lot of people fear that by breaking up with someone, they're somehow failing themselves, B, that other person. But the thing is if staying in the relationship is going to limit your growth, if staying in the relationship is going to limit their growth, if staying in the relationship slows down your journey towards aligning with your higher self, same goes for them, then what you're doing is an act of disservice to both you and that person.
Absolutely.
Because relationships, as we discussed in season 1, relationships are all about growth. They're all about love. They're all about deepening your understanding of not just yourself, but of the human condition, of humanity as a whole. Being in a relationship is not sunshine and daisies all the time. It is challenging. It is forcing you to look at yourself in the mirror and to really see, like, am I growing in this relationship, or am I just still? Is there growth in this relationship, or is it just stagnant?
And a lot of times what I find with people is their belief systems that keep them, hold them back, whether it's from a relationship or anything else. Maybe the relationship isn't a husband, wife, partner, friend. Maybe it's a work relationship.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody is, that there is this belief system that God wanted its way. Or, I'm being treated this way because I deserve it. Or, especially with husband-wife relationships and partnerships, and a lot of times even like any type of romantic partnership, you know, like, I don't believe in force. I don't believe in this and I don't believe in that. When instead of looking at life as like a series of rules and regulations that you have to follow to get into heaven, why don't we shift our perspective and start looking at it as the journey of the soul and the experience of life? God wouldn't bring us through an experience if he didn't want us to have that experience. And we're not failing. It's the experience, and it's what we're learning through the experience and through our journey of life. What were the intentions when these religious leaders started shooting out all of these rules and regulations for people to follow? You have to look at that. We have to look at that. Why all these rules and regulations? When we get down to the truth of who we are, we know what we need to do, regardless of the rules and regulations. When we get down to the truth of who we are, a person isn't going to naturally do something to harm another person. That's not natural. It's when we are not in our truth. And it is when we are not living in our truth. And it's when we don't have our heart open to see the truth. And we spoke last season, it was all about consciousness of the heart. And now, you know, it's about transformation. And in order for that transformation to happen in an effortless and seamless way, we have to have our hearts open to our own truth. Because if the kingdom of heaven really is within, the truth is connected to God. Our truth, our own unique journey is connected to God. So what are these rules and regulations doing to us? Exactly. It's making us a slave to somebody else. And we're not here to be a slave. We are here to liberate ourselves. We are here to do just that.
Exactly.
And destruction has to happen, whether it's the destruction of a thought pattern, destruction of relationship, destruction, whatever that destruction is, political systems. These things have to happen in order to get us closer to liberation. Freedom. And that's kind of been like a running theme from the very first episode that we recorded to the actual first episode.
Yeah,
the freedom of the soul.
The churn.
Freedom of the soul.
Yeah.
Everybody wants freedom.
And that's the thing, though, is like, if the word destruction triggers you, if the word destruction brings up fear, then I love that today is just, I'm being like flooded with movie quotes, and that makes me super happy, because I've been dying to do this on this show, is to just throw out movie quotes, because sometimes, I mean, stories are what they are. My affinity to storytelling is to me, like, that's how I connect with the divine. It's through stories. There's a line in Man of Steel where, and it's the Superman movie that came out in 2015, I think, where Clark is having, it's one of my favorite scenes in the movie, and it has nothing to do with Superman. That's the greatest thing. Clark is a kid, and he's just getting attuned to his abilities, and he is so terrified and overwhelmed of his abilities that he locks himself in a closet. And the school has to call his mom, and his mom comes up to the door, and she's like, Clark, you know, it's me, open the door. And then Clark says these words: "The world's too big, Mom." And then she tells him, well, then make it small. And so if you're out there and the word destruction feels a bit overwhelming to you, like the world is too big, then make it small. Think of it this way. When you plant a seed in the soil and you water it, it has to destroy its original form in order to become a plant. It has to break open and roots will have to come out and it will have to let go of its original form, which is a seed. This little itty bitty thing has to destroy itself in order to become a plant. And then that plant eventually destroys itself in order to become a tree. And then the tree destroys itself every winter in order to bloom again and continue growing and growing and growing. So destruction doesn't necessarily have to mean the apocalypse. Destruction is legitimately the letting go of what was in order for you to become what is and what will be.
And sometimes the seed has a hard casing on it. Sometimes it takes a little extra for that seed to crack open.
A little extra oomph.
Yeah, it does. Some seeds crack very easily. Some seeds are very fleshy. If you look at like an apple seed, you know, you can like bite that with your teeth pretty easy. But if you were to like bite into an olive, I can't tell you how many times I've hurt my mouth doing that.
My God, the pain.
You know? Yeah, exactly. Some seeds take a little bit more to crack. They really do. And some of us take a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And some of us crack pretty easy. But we're all different. You know, the apple isn't the olive isn't the apple. You know, the apple's not the peach or the banana, you know, so it's all to bring us where we need to be, our individual selves.
And although we are individual and different, the cycles don't change.
With the cycle, the story of the cycle might be a little bit different for all of us.
Yeah. I meant like the context of the cycle.
All,
sure.
As long as we're here in a human body, we are all subject to the cycles. Vedas call it the three gunas. You know, we are all in the destruction. We're all in the generation. We're all in the maintenance. We are all there. That runs this world. What keeps it going.
Yeah, Beyonce might have said, "Who runs the world, girls?" It's actually who runs the world, gunas. That's who runs the world.
Yes. The three gunas, generation operations.
Who runs the world? The three gunas, lady. That's who runs the world.
I love that. I love that. There's something in here that I wanted to read today.
Sure, yes.
Mind.
Let's do that as we inch closer towards the closing of the episode. I would love to hear that, or whatever you want to share.
Surrender to love and when God. And I love that he said that, because usually people say surrender to God and then love. But people are like, who the heck is God? You know, not everybody. I don't think anybody really can define God, first of all, because God is infinite. And God is a personal experience for everybody. So my definition of God is different than your definition of God. And everybody's going to have a slightly different definition. And nobody's really wrong. That's the thing.
Right.
So, you know, surrender to God, which aspect of God? But, you know, surrender to love and win God. I love this. I mean, that's so simple, but so profound, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So he says, Sri Kalishwar said, all of this is not coming from you. You are just a doll. in front of God's hands. If you feel I am the healer, I am the big man, it means you're the biggest stupid in the universe. Completely. It's God's energy. When it's flowing, you're starting to help the people. Whatever happens is the God energy flowing through you. At that time, you have to be very respectful, humbled, and completely surrendered with a big open heart. You have to become a man of love. When your heart is completely filled with huge love, then God is your big servant. God is not like a big, powerful man who wears a big crown and diamonds. God is your slave. God is your servant. There are divine powers in which you are realized only when your heart is completely open. God is with you when there is no egoism, no jealousy, and you completely surrender to him. That is why Jesus became the supreme #1 powerful master in the universe. Even though his students and people gave him trouble, he simply smiled and accepted it. He simply smiled and said, okay, do it. My Father is making you act this way. I'm happy. Because of this, Jesus tasted God's power. He did unbelievable miracles. He knew the God power. The same God gave the test. But Jesus did not command on God. He did not need to be angry with the people. He never used his power for selfishness. Simply, his heart was open and smiling and accepting. That is why he became the highest, most powerful master in the universe, because his love, Jesus, means love, and love means Jesus. Nobody should expect that if they go to Sri Kaleshwar Swami and learn this mantra and that mantra, that you can get the power to become a big healer. No way. You have to improve your love, your purity, and divinity. You have to have a big surrendering nature to God. There has to be understanding between you and your family members and your friends. Then you can be successful in your entire life. Powers are not in your pocket. We can make money. We can get name and fame. We can get a beautiful husband. We can get a beautiful wife. But we can't get God without love. There is no power in you except God. When you feel you have the power, but it's only coming from God, it's not coming from you. Without God, no one can do anything. Even a big hero, without God's help, he's a big zero. So we need God's grace, God's love, God's blessing. We don't need to be hungry to find him. He is within us, in us.
That's beautiful.
It is so beautiful. I love this book.
Beautiful.
I always seem to open it up to something that I need.
I love when he
surrender
says,
to that love.
I love when he says, if you think you're the big #1, if you think you're the big guru, you're only the big stupid.
Yeah.
It just makes me, I'm just like, Sri Kaleshwar, you're a comedian, man.
Yeah. If you think that
I
you
love
are
it.
doing the healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you take away God from the equation, then there's no point to it. That was
And if
the
God,
#1 lesson
if
that
God
you
is
taught me.
within us,
Yeah.
if God is within us and we're doing a healing and we aren't surrendering to God, we're not surrendering to our truth and who we are.
Right.
We're not surrendering to
Right.
ourselves.
Right. 100%.
You
100%.
know, you're cutting yourself out by saying, I did this, essentially.
Yeah. 100%. So I turn this to our listeners and say, how are you surrendering to God? Ask yourself that question. How am I surrendering to God? How am I surrendering to love and God?
Do you know what makes me surrender? What keeps me in a state of surrender? And that's gratitude.
Yeah.
Gratitude really keeps me in a state of surrender. So when I'm working on somebody and I have somebody on my table, and when you play these reels, people can't see it, but I'm sitting in my space where I work on people, and right beside me is my table, and right here to the head of everybody, Shirdi Sai Baba, and he is a modern day saint from India, from Shirdi, India, and he is who I look to. I also have a picture of Jesus up here. I have a picture of Mary up here. I have a picture up here that our listeners can't see when they see our reels of Sri Sai Kaleshwar. And before I leave this office every single day, I always say thank you.
Yeah.
And
before we
having
start,
these pictures
before we start our every
keeps me
episode,
humble.
before we
Yeah,
start our every episode, we're both saying our little
prayer.
our little prayer, our little grace before we start,
It keeps
the
me,
episode.
having these pictures keeps the divine,
Yeah.
keeps God real for me. And so every time a client on my table starts to heal, I look at those pictures and open my heart and I say thank you. Every time a client pays me, I look at my pictures and I say thank you. Every time a friend reaches out to me, I say thank you. And every time my prayer is answered through the form of destruction, I say thank you.
I say thank you.
Even if it feels like shit, because sometimes it feels like shit, I say thank you.
I think this is the first time we've ever cursed on the show.
Yeah, sorry. Well, I did it.
I think
I broke the seal.
You did. I was waiting to see which one of us was going to be the first one to break, and I swear to you, I never thought it would be you. I thought I was going to be the first one to crack, to be very honest. But
I broke that cherry, didn't I? I popped that cherry.
yes, you did. Yes, you did. And on that note, and on that very popped curse word cherry, thank you, our listeners. Thank you, the divine, for making our show as special as it is for Allison and I. If you want to follow us on social media, you can do so at the Vistara Hour, our official Instagram page. You can also check out our website, thevistarahour.com, or you can reach out to us, leave a comment on the episodes, send us some feedback. And then from the website, you could either listen to the show on the website, or you can go to all podcast platforms from our website. So if you want to reach out to us directly via email, you can do so at thevistarahour@gmail.com. And as by new tradition, which I am so loving, we're going to close out our episode with a little prayer from Allison. So, Milo wants to join for the prayer, so that's perfectly fine.
Perfect timing, Milo.
That's perfectly fine. So let's hear it, Allison. Go for it.
May all beings everywhere be happy and free. May the thoughts, words, and actions of my life contribute to happiness and freedom for all.
Blessings, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week.